The invitation arrived 3 days earlier. A golden card with elegant black lettering. An invitation from my ex-fiancé, Kang Mi-ho, the most feared Korean mafia boss in Seoul, to attend his exclusive gala. Everyone knew what it really was. A public execution. He wanted me to watch him move on. He wanted 300 powerful guests to see me broken, discarded, and forgotten. But what Kang Mi-ho didn't know was that I wouldn't be walking into that room alone. And the man I brought with me was even more dangerous than him. Hey family, before we get into the story, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Trust me, you're going to want to stay till the end of this one. The grand ballroom glittered like nothing could go wrong. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Soft music played. 300 guests moved through the space in designer gowns and tailored suits, smiling, laughing, pretending they belonged in this world of wealth and power. But I knew the truth. This wasn't a celebration. It was a stage. And my ex, Kang Mi-ho, the ruthless Korean mafia boss, had invited me here for one reason only: to humiliate me. I stepped into the room alone. My red dress hugged my body with quiet confidence. Heads turned. Whispers followed. But I kept my chin high, walking like I still belonged here, even though he had made sure everyone knew I didn't. Kang Mi-ho stood near the center of the room, looking devastating in his black suit. His arm was wrapped around a beautiful woman I didn't recognize. She leaned into him like she already owned the space beside him. He wanted me to see it. He wanted everyone to see it. I felt the weight of 300 eyes on me. Some pitied me. Some judged me. Some waited for the moment I would break. But I didn't stop walking. I moved closer, until I was standing right in front of him. Kang Mi-ho finally looked at me. His eyes carried that familiar coldness, the one that used to make my heart race for different reasons. Now it only felt empty. "You came," he said, voice low enough for only us to hear. A slight smirk touched his lips. "I wasn't sure you would." I met his gaze calmly. "You invited me," I replied softly. "So here I am." The woman beside him smiled sweetly, but her eyes were sharp. She wanted to see me crumble. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. This was the moment he had planned, the public reminder that I was nothing to him anymore. But before he could speak again, the heavy doors of the ballroom opened once more. A shift moved through the air. The music didn't stop, but the energy in the room changed completely. He walked in. Tall, dangerous, untouchable. Another Korean man, sharper jawline, colder eyes, and an aura that made even Kang Mi-ho pause. A quiet power radiated from him, the kind that didn't need to speak to be felt. And he walked straight toward me. Without hesitation, he stopped beside me. His hand gently touched the small of my back, protective, possessive, calm. Then he looked at Kang Mi-ho with eyes that held no warmth. "Sorry I'm late, love," he said, his voice deep and smooth, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. Traffic was terrible. The entire room froze. Kang Mi-ho's smirk vanished. The woman beside him looked shocked. And I simply leaned slightly into the man standing next to me, the real Korean mafia boss everyone feared but no one dared cross. 300 guests had come to watch my humiliation. Instead, they witnessed something else. The beginning of my quiet revenge. The dance floor felt like a battlefield dressed in silk and crystal. Jae-sung's hand rested firmly on my waist as we moved slowly to the music. His touch was gentle, yet protective. Every step we took drew more eyes. The soft glow of the chandeliers cast long shadows across the room, turning the moment into something almost theatrical. I could feel Kang Mi-ho watching us. His stare burned into my back like fire on ice. "You're trembling slightly," Jae-sung murmured, his voice low and calm near my ear. I lifted my gaze to meet his. Not from fear. He studied me for a moment, those sharp, unreadable eyes softening just a fraction. Good. Because fear has no place here tonight. Around us, couples pretended to dance while stealing glances. The whispers had already begun. I could almost hear them. "Who is she with? Is that Han Jae-sung?" Kang Mi-ho looks furious. 300 guests had come expecting to witness my humiliation. Instead, they were watching something far more interesting, a quiet power shift. Kang Mi-ho finally stepped onto the edge of the dance floor, the woman in his arm trailing behind him like an accessory. His jaw was tight. The charming mask he usually wore in public had cracked. He stopped a few feet away, forcing us to acknowledge him. "May I cut in?" he asked, voice smooth but carrying an edge. Jae-sung didn't stop dancing. He simply turned us slightly, keeping me close. "No," he answered calmly. "She's not available." The words landed like a quiet thunderclap. A few nearby guests actually gasped. Kang Miho's eyes darkened. "You're crossing a line, Jae-sung," he said, his tone low enough that only we could hear. Jae-sung smiled, small, dangerous, and completely unbothered. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." I remained silent, letting the two powerful men speak. But inside, something was shifting. Months of pain, of feeling discarded and invisible, were slowly transforming into something colder. Something sharper. The woman beside Kang Miho looked increasingly uncomfortable. She had expected to stand beside the winner tonight. Instead, she was watching her new man lose control of the narrative. I met her eyes for a brief second. She looked away first. That small victory tasted sweeter than I expected. As the song reached its peak, Jae-sung spun me gently. For a moment, the world blurred, the chandeliers, the guests, the pain of the past. When I came back to face him, his expression had changed slightly. "You don't have to be strong every second," he said quietly. "Not with me." I gave him a small, genuine smile. "I know. But tonight, I want to be." He nodded once, respecting my decision without question. That respect meant more than he probably realized. When the music faded, we walked off the dance floor together. Kang Miho was still standing there, watching. His companion had gone silent, her hand no longer on his arm with the same confidence. As we passed him, I stopped for just a moment. I looked directly into Kang Miho's eyes, the same eyes that once made me feel loved, then worthless. "You wanted me to see you happy," I said softly, my voice steady. "I hope you enjoyed the view." He didn't reply. For the first time in our long, complicated history, Kang Miho had nothing to say. Jae-sung and I continued walking through the crowd. The guests parted slightly, some nodding with quiet respect, others too stunned to react. I kept my head high, shoulders relaxed, red dress flowing with each step. Inside my chest, my heart was beating with a new rhythm. Not broken, not desperate, but awake. This night was supposed to destroy me. Instead, it had introduced me to a version of myself I had never met before. A woman who could walk into the lion's den wearing red, and walk out even stronger. And somewhere behind me, I knew Kang Miho was still watching. The game had changed. And for the first time, I wasn't the one playing defense anymore. The night deepened, but the tension in the ballroom only grew sharper. Jae-sung and I stood near the tall windows overlooking the glittering Seoul skyline. The city lights stretched endlessly below us, beautiful and indifferent to the quiet war unfolding above them. His presence beside me felt steady, like an anchor in a storm I hadn't realized I was still navigating. "You handled that well," he said quietly, handing me a fresh glass of champagne. His voice was low, intimate, yet carried the weight of someone used to power. I took a small sip, letting the bubbles settle on my tongue. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me react. Jae-sung studied me with those piercing eyes. Most women would have left in tears. Or caused a scene. You did neither. I turned slightly to face him. Because this isn't about breaking down anymore. It's about not giving him the power to break me. Across the room, Kang Miho stood surrounded by a circle of influential men. But his attention wasn't on them. It was on me. Even from a distance, I could feel the intensity of his gaze, no longer just irritation, but something deeper. Something darker. Regret? Possessiveness? Or the slow burn of realizing he had underestimated me. The woman beside him kept trying to pull his focus, touching his arm, laughing a little too brightly. But he barely responded. His eyes kept returning to where I stood with Jae-sung. I allowed myself one long look back at him. In that moment, memories flashed through my mind, late nights in his penthouse, whispered promises, the way he once made me feel like the only woman in his dangerous world. Then the coldness, the distance, the final, public discard. Those memories no longer hurt the way they used to. They fueled me. Jae-sung noticed the exchange. "He's watching you like he's seeing you for the first time." "Maybe he is," I replied softly. Or maybe he's realizing what he threw away. A faint smile touched Jae-sung's lips. Careful. Men like Kang Mi-ho don't like losing. Especially not in public. I know, I said. But I'm not interested in playing his game anymore. We continued walking slowly through the elegant crowd. The soft glow of chandeliers reflected off diamonds and expensive watches. Conversations hushed as we passed. Some guests nodded respectfully toward Jae-sung. Others stared at me with new curiosity, the woman who had walked into her own humiliation and turned it into something else. Power. Dignity. Quiet defiance. Later, as the evening wore on, I stepped away briefly to catch my breath on a quiet balcony. The cool night air brushed against my skin. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the night settle. Footsteps approached behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Kang Mi-ho. You've changed, he said, his voice cutting through the silence. I opened my eyes but didn't face him immediately. People tend to change when they're discarded like yesterday's news. He stepped closer. Bringing Jae-sung here, that was bold. Even for you. I finally turned, meeting his gaze. You invited me to watch you start a new chapter. I simply brought my own. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The city hummed far below us. Inside, the party continued, but out here, it felt like only the two of us existed. I didn't expect this, he admitted, almost too quietly. I smiled, calm, controlled, with just a hint of ice. That's the thing, Mi-ho. You never really saw me. Not fully. You saw what was convenient. What looked good beside you. But tonight, you're seeing the version you helped create. His jaw tightened. Something flickered in his eyes, regret, maybe even a trace of longing. But I didn't let it touch me. Not anymore. I should get back, I said, stepping past him. Jae-sung is waiting. As I walked away, I felt his eyes on me once again. Heavy. Unsettled. He had planned tonight to be my ending. Instead, it was becoming my beginning. And somewhere in the golden lights of that ballroom, the seeds of quiet revenge had been planted, not loud, not rushed, but deep. Patient. Inevitable. The morning after the gala, the city woke up to whispers. My phone had been vibrating since sunrise. Messages from mutual acquaintances. Old friends. Even a few of Kang Mi-ho's own circle. Everyone wanted to know what happened last night. Everyone wanted to understand how the discarded ex showed up with Han Jae-sung and left the room buzzing. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I sat in the sunlit living room of my new apartment, wearing a silk robe, drinking black coffee, and opening my laptop with calm hands. This was where the real game began. Quiet revenge doesn't scream. It calculates. I started with something small but meaningful. First, I transferred a portion of the money he had once generously given me into a separate account, not out of greed, but as a declaration. That chapter was closed. Then I began reviewing documents I had quietly kept over the years. Emails, contracts, names of business partners, offshore accounts he thought I never noticed. He always believed I was just beautiful decoration beside him. He never realized how much I had observed. By midday, I made my first real move. I sent a single polite message to one of Kang Mi-ho's biggest business partners, Mr. Park, a man who had always been kind to me during dinners and events. Mr. Park, I hope you're well. I wanted to thank you for your support over the years. If you ever need a private conversation about future opportunities, I'm available. Simple, elegant, non-threatening. But in their world, it was enough to plant a seed of doubt. If the woman Kang Mi-ho publicly discarded was now aligned with Han Jae-sung, then perhaps alliances needed to be reconsidered. I didn't stop there. I reached out to two more people carefully chosen. One was a woman who ran an exclusive charity event that Kang Mi-ho's family had sponsored for years. The other was a journalist who covered high society scandals with tasteful discretion. No accusations. No drama. Just calm, confident conversations that reminded them I still existed and that I was no longer broken. In the afternoon, I received my first response. Mr. Park replied, "It was good to see you last night. You looked radiant. Let's have tea next week." A small victory, but an important one. Word would travel. Kang Mi-ho would eventually hear that I was no longer hiding, that I was moving pieces on the board he thought he controlled. As evening approached, I stood by the large window, watching the sun set over Seoul. The red dress from last night hung in my closet like a trophy. My phone lit up with a new message. It was from Kang Mi-ho. "We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I placed the phone face down on the table without replying. He wanted to talk because he was unsettled. Because last night didn't go according to his plan. Because seeing me with Jae-sung had awakened something in him, regret, possessiveness, or maybe even fear. But I was no longer available at his convenience. Jae-sung had sent me a message earlier. "You did well last night. If you need anything, you know where to find me." I smiled softly. He was dangerous, powerful, and strangely respectful. Having him in my corner was an advantage I hadn't expected, but one I wouldn't waste. This was only the beginning. I wasn't going to destroy Kang Mi-ho overnight. That would be too easy. Too loud. My revenge would be slow, elegant, crushing. I would take back my power piece by piece, through influence, through silence, through strategic alliances. I would become someone he could no longer ignore. Someone he would eventually fear losing more than he ever feared loving. As night fell, I poured myself a glass of red wine and raised it toward the glowing city. To new beginnings, I whispered. Kang Mi-ho had invited me to my own funeral. Instead, he had attended the birth of a woman he would never control again. The days that followed moved with a quiet rhythm I was beginning to enjoy. No more waiting for messages that never came. No more wondering if I was enough. Only the soft click of my laptop keys and the calm certainty that I was finally building something of my own. I met Mr. Park for tea 3 days later at a private rooftop lounge overlooking the Han River. The afternoon sun shimmered on the water as we spoke about business, art, and subtle shifts in the city's power circles. He was careful with his words, but I could read between them. Kang Mi-ho's recent decisions had made some partners uneasy, and my sudden reappearance beside Han Jae-sung had made them curious. "You carry yourself differently now," Mr. Park said, studying me over his cup. "Stronger." I smiled softly, neither confirming nor denying. Pain has a way of refining a person. He nodded slowly, a man who had seen many chapters in this dangerous world. "If you ever need support in your next venture, you know how to reach me." That single conversation was worth more than any loud argument. One quiet alliance formed. One small crack in the foundation Kang Mi-ho believed was unbreakable. That evening, I received another message from Kang Mi-ho. "Stop this. We need to talk. Properly." I left it unread for several hours. When I finally replied, my message was short and elegant. "There's nothing left to talk about, Mi-ho. You made your choice in front of everyone. Now I'm making mine. Simple. Final. Calm." But every word carried weight. Jae-sung invited me to dinner the following night at one of Seoul's most exclusive restaurants. Not as a favor. Not out of pity. But because, as he said, "I enjoy your company." We sat at a corner table with soft lighting and a breathtaking view. He was dressed in all black, looking every bit the powerful man he was. Yet with me, his demeanor was different, respectful, attentive, almost protective. "You're moving fast," he observed, pouring me a glass of wine. "Most people would still be recovering." "I wasted enough time recovering," I replied. "Now I'm choosing what happens next." He leaned back slightly, watching me with quiet admiration. "Kang Mi-ho is starting to feel the pressure. I heard he canceled 2 meetings this week. He keeps asking people about you." I took a slow sip of wine, letting the rich taste settle. "Good," I said softly. "Let him feel it." Later that night, as Jae-sung drove me home, the city lights blurred past the windows. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like someone who had been left behind. I felt like someone moving forward, deliberately, powerfully, and on my own terms. But revenge, I was learning, had layers. It wasn't just about taking things from him. It was about becoming someone he could never have again. The next morning, I woke up to news that one of Kang Mi-ho's smaller but symbolic investments had quietly pulled out. Nothing dramatic. Nothing traceable directly to me. But I knew. Word was spreading. The woman he tried to bury was very much alive, and she was no longer playing by his rules. I stood on my balcony, the morning breeze brushing against my skin as I looked out over the waking city. My red dress from the gala hung in my closet like a reminder. Not of pain, but of power. Kang Mi-ho had invited me to my humiliation. Instead, he had given me the perfect stage to begin rewriting my story. And I was only getting started. 3 months had passed since that fateful gala night. The city had moved on, but Kong Miho had not. I heard the reports through careful whispers. His once unshakable empire was facing small but consistent cracks, partners hesitating, deals falling through quietly, old allies suddenly too busy to meet. Nothing loud enough to make headlines, just enough to make him feel the pressure. And every time someone mentioned my name in his presence, his expression grew darker. I stood on the rooftop terrace of my new penthouse, the same red dress from that night now hanging in my closet as a symbol of victory. The Seoul skyline stretched before me, glowing under the night sky. A glass of red wine rested in my hand. This was the ending I had carefully written, not with screams or public destruction, but with silence and strategy. My phone vibrated. A message from Kong Miho. Meet me tonight, please. I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I typed my reply. There's a charity gala next week. The one you used to sponsor. I'll be there. Come if you want to talk. I didn't wait for his response. I placed the phone down and took a slow sip of wine. The night of the charity gala arrived. The hall was just as luxurious as the last one. But this time, the energy was different. I walked in alone, not because I needed protection, but because I no longer did. My black gown flowed elegantly as I moved through the crowd. Heads turned again, but this time the whispers carried respect instead of pity. Kong Miho arrived 30 minutes later. He looked tired. Handsome still, but worn. His eyes found me immediately across the room. He approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. You've been busy, he said, voice low. I turned to face him fully. Calm. Unbreakable. I have. He swallowed. I made a mistake that night. I thought humiliating you would make me feel powerful. Instead, it woke something in you I never saw before. I smiled, small, cold, and final. You didn't just humiliate me, Miho. You freed me. And in doing so, you lost the one person who truly understood your world without fearing it. For the first time, I saw real regret in his eyes. Deep. Heavy. Genuine. I want you back, he whispered. I'll fix everything. I looked at him for a long moment, letting the weight of his words settle between us. Then I leaned in slightly and spoke softly, so only he could hear. You broke me enough. Now watch me rise without you. I turned and walked away. No dramatic scene. No shouting. No tears. Just the calm, elegant departure of a woman who had reclaimed her power completely. Kong Miho stood there, frozen, watching me disappear into the crowd, the same way I once watched him walk away with another woman. This time, the silence was mine. Later that night, as I stepped into my car, Jae-sung was waiting for me in the driver's seat. He didn't ask questions. He simply smiled and started the engine. The city lights blurred past us. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and breathed deeply. The woman who had walked into that first gala broken and discarded no longer existed. In her place was someone stronger, someone patient, someone dangerous in her silence. Kang Miho had invited me to witness his new beginning. Instead, he witnessed mine. And this time, there would be no return. The end.
If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Fallen Empire Stories for more emotional revenge, betrayal, and powerful comeback stories. Because every fallen empire has a story, and some revenge stories are only beginning.